let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
Ever wonder what your pets think about, what they talk about, and what they do when we're not home?
Any plans today?
Look at my plans. It's all laid out right here. Bam! Bam!
That ball of fluff's got a screw loose.
Max, this is Duke. He's going to be your brother.
Chloe, I got a bad situation.
I'm your friend, and as your friend, I gotta be honest with you. I don't care about you or your problems.
This is my apartment now, and my new bed.
Hello. This is Adolf Vega from 3D or 2D.com, and today I'm reviewing The Secret Life of Pets. As always on my 3D or 2D.com reviews, I'll talk about the 3D element first. The Secret Life of Pets uses 3D in gimmicky ways, but it's fun and it works for this type of movie. 3D depth is not really used in this movie and is pretty much forgotten. It's in the background and not really there. But the main thing that they do is pop out 3D, and that's the focus. And for comedy effect, things and animals and will fly out, and it works at the most opportune times. And it works for what it is. It's silly, it's, over the top, but it's memorable, and, there's a couple scenes with snakes that really caught my eye. I liked it. It wasn't amazing, it just worked for what it was. And I can recommend a 3D for this movie. I say good 3D. Not the best, but it definitely works for what it is. It's silly, kind of gimmicky 3D, but it's fun. Now, on to the movie itself. So, The Secret Life of Pets is the next movie from Illumination Studios, which is the same people that have done Minions. And you actually get a Minions short before this movie starts. But this movie really doesn't feel like Minions. It actually feels a lot smarter. The question the people have had, since taming dogs and cats is, what kind of adventures, what do the animals, pets do when you go to work or when you leave the house or whatever? And this movie at least gives you a theory of what happens. The story itself is pretty simple and enjoyable, and kind of reminds me a little bit of the Looney Tunes cartoons, where it's lighthearted and fun. The movie itself is pretty funny, and the screenplay has some very clever things it does with the animals, and it has some good jokes that the adults will enjoy too. The movie is actually set in New York City, and this actually makes a pretty good use of the city as the backdrop. The city is almost a character unto itself. It really feels like the movie was made for New York City in mind, and it really makes a more interesting, compelling story because of the setting. The main movie is about the cast, which is actually really huge, and mostly about animals and a few humans. The story itself is focused on the dog, Max, who's been living with a human named Katie. Katie adopts a new dog named Duke, and Max has to deal with the new dog moving into the house, and living with him, of course. A few other animals live in apartment complexes nearby to Max and Duke, and they know each other and interact with one another, and they actually do a good job of introducing some of them. There's Gidget, a dog that is nearby. There is Cleo, a big fat cat, and eventually you find Snowball, which is a rabbit. Snowball is actually a villain of this movie, and he has a grudge against humanity, and he leads an underground gang of animals. The main plot revolves around the dogs Max and Duke, who are trying to get back home. And eventually they meet up with Snowball, and they have a few adventures along the way. The movie does actually a pretty good job of giving key animals interesting backstory, and, it works. For the few key character characters they decide to do it on. There's quite a few secondary in the third line of cast where you don't really know anything about them. They're probably not even given names, and they're just there. But the key ones are given actually pretty compelling backstories, and it works. It makes you care what happens to these animals. And I really enjoyed how much of animals they are. The movie doesn't have them really walking on two legs and, wearing clothes. These are just pets, and they interact and look like actual animals, but they could talk to one another. Dogs and cats can talk to one another and so forth. But humans cannot understand the dogs and cats and animals when they speak. So it has their noises, and it has their mannerisms, and it works to give the illusion that there's two different perspectives, one of the animals and one of the humans, and it kind of have some fun poking around those ideas of it being two perspectives within the movie. It's kind of a smarter movie because of that. The movie itself doesn't try to be too big. There's not an end of the world storyline. It's a basic little story about dogs trying to find their way home. The story itself, I enjoyed it. There's some issues though, and I feel like some of the characters could have been cut out and made a tighter list of characters if you just cut things out, because it's just not needed to have that many characters. Snowball and his gang is interesting, but they kind of just appear whenever it's convenient for plot advancement, and it doesn't feel natural. There's one action scene toward the end with Gidget that is really cute, but doesn't make sense at all. And the third act kind of seems too long, and some of the action sequences seem kind of far-fetched within this context of this world. It's a cartoon, you gotta give it some slack, but at the same time, it doesn't really make sense. The animals aren't superpowered or anything like that. And it kind of gives you the impression, and it just seems totally random. Overall, I still really enjoyed The Secret Life of Pets, and was surprised how well this film actually worked. The movie has some problems, like I said, but it does a good job with the material that it had. I really like this. I think it's a good movie that the whole family can enjoy, and I recommend it. It is more advanced than the trailers may look, but it doesn't try to be too big for its britches, and it knows when to basically give up and not to overstay its welcome. It's a good movie for the whole family, and I recommend it. So I'm going to give this a final score of 7 out of 10. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Discover the secret life of pets.
Be a good boy, Leonard.
Alright, so that's going to wrap up this podcast.
Remember to like, comment, favorite, subscribe, love, whatever. Heart it, do something.
3D or 2D.com can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and SoundCloud. And if you want to send us email, our email address is email3d or 2d@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.